Okay, hi everyone. Um, okay, so I am Jillian Smith. I am with Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, and I'm the lead for this project. And just so everyone knows, this is being recorded. Dan Highland is the supervisor. If you want to say hi, Dan.
Hello.
And then Chris Tasker is the manager.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, great. Heather, can we go to the third slide? Okay, so the Fullarton Dam and Reservoir are located at the Fullarton Conservation Area in the municipality of West Perth. In 2007, a dam safety assessment was completed, which identified spillway capacity issues and stability concerns. A class environmental assessment for remedial flood and erosion control projects is being prepared to support the long-term planning of the Fullarton Dam. The Upper Thames River watershed is located within traditional territories. There are 10 First Nations whose traditional territories overlaps with the Upper Thames River watershed. At Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, we value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and all of the original people of Turtle Island. And the Fullarton Conservation Area is located on the North Thames River, which feeds into the Fanshawe Lake and then into the Thames River.
Hi, everyone. My name is Farah Rahim. I am a senior environmental planner with Stantec. So the purpose of this meeting is to present and gather your input on the Fullarton Dam study, environmental assessment study that we're conducting. We're going to go through the existing and future dam needs. We're also going to review the problem and opportunity statement, existing conditions, and my colleague Heather will be presenting the alternative solutions, as well as I'll go through how these solutions were evaluated from an environmental and technical perspective. And then we're going to go through what is the recommended solution. And then an overview of some high-level mitigation measures that will be considered based on that recommended solution. And then the final slide will cover the next steps in the process and open it up for Q&A. Next slide. So just to start, what we wanted to do first was to go through the Conservation Ontario class environmental assessment for remedial flood and erosion control projects. So most of you have received a notice of project initiation that was posted in the newspaper, essentially just explaining the basis of the project and what we were going to be studying as part of the Class EA. And then we moved forward with conducting baseline inventory. So this meant doing field studies to gather information about the natural environment and the rest of in terms of the area itself and what was there in terms of existing conditions. Then we move forward with the conducting the evaluation of alternatives and the recommendation of what was the preferred. So this is where we are here right now, is as we have completed the evaluation, we are presenting this information to the public and any additional meetings with agencies that have been requested to confirm and listen to any comments about what has been presented. And then the next step is to prepare the environmental study report, which will be provided to the public for a 30-day review period. And after that point, we will address any comments that we receive based on the ESR and issue another notice at that point. Next slide. I just wanted to flag that if anyone has any questions, you can use the chat function and select me. I'm Farnaz Rahim, and just send me any questions you have. You can send it throughout the presentation as ideas or things come up. And when we get to the Q&A part, I will provide those questions to the team. So just going through the site background. The Fullarton Conservation Area is a 34-hectare recreational area. There are 2 trails in the conservation area that allow for walking around the pond through a mixed forest, pinewood forest. And the existing Fullarton Dam, it's an earth dam. It was built in the 1950s to create this recreational lake. But an outcome of the 2007 dam safety assessment indicated that the current condition of the earth dam would require works to rehabilitate it in order to meet appropriate safety and stability standards. So based on that, we created this problem and opportunity statement. So the purpose of this EA is to identify the alternatives that address the dam safety deficiencies. The preferred management strategy for the dam will be selected based on natural environmental considerations and the social uses associated with the dam and the reservoir and the rest of the Fullarton Conservation Area. So based on the Class EA, which has certain design principles. So we can, in consideration, there are areas of emphasis according to the Class EA that we were looking at. 2 of which are alternative methods which replicate the natural environment will be given preference over the hard alternatives where possible. And that projects should evaluate opportunities for enhancement of the terrestrial and aquatic habitats as part of the project design. And another consideration, according to the Class EA, is that during rehabilitation, it should provide for reestablishment of vegetative cover within the shoreline or valley system, particularly adjacent to any water courses or shorelines. And vegetation reestablishment should be compatible with the existing local and not disrupt the community. And it made to use native species, including the local flora. So based on that, in the Class EA, there is a section indicating that riverine flooding and dam safety issues can be mitigated by 2 options: dam decommissioning, and that addresses the safety and enhances the local environmental conditions and restores the stream function, as well as using channel realignment to support the flow, conveyance, and capacity. So when we were developing the evaluation criteria, we looked specifically at all aspects of the environment. So what should we be considering? There's the cultural, physical, biological, socioeconomic, and technical. And then within those, next slide. So within biological, we have, for example, this is not a fulsome list, but it's just a snapshot of some of the more important things that are included in that. So we considered fish and fish habitat, wildlife habitat, significant vegetation communities, and within the physical, of course, land use, geomorphology, and earth sciences, the ANSIs, areas of natural and scientific interest. Within the cultural, of course, the traditional land uses, recreational uses along the shoreline as well as the trail, any heritage considerations for the dam, aesthetic or scenic landscapes or views with the dam and the reservoir. Within the socioeconomic, we have of course, the surrounding neighborhood to consider, the community and the park users, existing infrastructure and pedestrian traffic. And then of the engineering and technical, which is the rate of erosion in the ecosystem. So that's how much sediment is being transported as a result of the dam's existence. The flood risk within the ecosystem and the slope stability. So now I'll pass it to my colleague Heather, who will introduce herself and go through the alternatives.
Good evening. We're glad to have you out here tonight. I'm Heather Amaro. I'm a water resources engineer, and I am managing the project on behalf of the UTRC's consultant. So I'm going to go through 4 alternatives. Every EA has to have a do nothing alternative as a basis of comparison. And so in this case, do nothing doesn't actually represent doing literally nothing, but does represent maintaining the existing conditions on site. However, as we know, the age of the dam and the safety reporting would indicate that there are some potential concerns here. And so in order to maintain the dam in a compliant state, there would be upgrades required to possibly the dam, the earth dam itself, as well as the outlet structure. The current dam is not fish passable, so it is a barrier to fish passage. Therefore, fish downstream cannot go upstream and vice versa. And we also understand that the online reservoir, it backs all the water up in this wide open space that can be subjected to solar warming. And so the water quality within the reservoir can be affected by a warming impact, which has a knock-on impact on fish and other aquatic life. So alternative 1 is maintain the dam in its existing location, but do the required repairs that are necessary to bring the dam into compliance with safety regulations. We would not be improving fish passage or fish habitat or water quality through this do nothing option. Alternative 2 addresses a couple of the issues that alternative 1 does not. Alternative 2 involves creating a fish bypass channel, which you can see as the blue line, which passes around the dam into the lower watercourse. And this would allow fish to move between the existing watercourse and the reservoir. We would maintain the dam, including doing all required safety enhancements and outlet upgrades. And the reservoir would remain, including the warming impact that it has. So what it does do is it allows fish passage. It doesn't really change the flow regime that we currently see in the valley. High flows will continue to spill over the dam structure itself. And it would require dam maintenance and ongoing safety improvements. The existing trail would be maintained across the dam, along with the addition of a crossing over the bypass channel. Alternative 3 takes it a little farther, in which we would work to lower the height of the dam structure itself. And a couple things that does is that it reduces the reservoir that's being retained upstream, and it stops the dam from falling under the dam regulations, in which case it's a little more safe and a little less onerous maintenance requirements. We would include a fish bypass channel, which is again the squiggly blue line. The trail across the former dam structure and over the new fishway would be maintained. This would allow fish passage, and it would reduce the thermal impacts from warming on the reservoir, as the reservoir volume would be decreased. The former area of reservoir, as you can see illustrated here, would be upgraded with new plantings, some new riparian wetlands, and it would allow fish passage from the downstream watercourse all the way up through the reservoir and beyond. And lastly, I will present to you alternative 4, which would be to fully decommission the dam such that the elevation behind the dam and downstream of the dam are equivalent, allowing fish passage without the need for a bypass channel. So the fish passage would be that the fish can swim up the watercourse and right through the old location of the dam and upwards. This would eliminate the reservoir as it is fully. However, you'll notice that we propose to again vegetate the former reservoir location and incorporate riparian wetland habitat. In this particular alternative, the dam is no longer functioning as a dam structure, and therefore it is not a safety threat, and maintenance and dam regulations are no longer a concern. The watercourse trail crossing would be incorporated into a detailed design phase here so that access across the channel is maintained. I'll pass it back to Fairness.
Thanks, Heather. So this is a summary of the evaluation of how we looked at the alternatives. So again, physical, biological, cultural, socioeconomic, and the engineering / technical, which took the costs into account as well. So for alternative 1, as Heather mentioned, this does not resolve the current flood capacity deficiencies of the dam. It would still require the upgrades and perpetual maintenance. And in the event of the failure of the dam, there are potential impacts to the natural environment as well. And even aside from dam failure, the barrier to fish passage remains, which does not follow in accordance with the considerations for replicating the natural environment and enhancing aquatic habitats, according to the Class CA. And from a cost perspective, do nothing in this case isn't $0. There are costs associated with bringing the structure into compliance with current regulations and safety requirements. And then there's on top of that, the cost of the general structure maintenance that remains as necessary spending in perpetuity. So that is why this particular option was identified as the least preferred. For alternative 2, maintaining the reservoir and the dam carries the same negative impacts as alternative 1, with the exception that you eliminate the barrier to fish passage. So while this alternative does fulfill those design principles surrounding the enhancement of the aquatic habitat, it doesn't accomplish that reestablishment of the natural function of the waterway, which is what we're trying to accomplish. And the costs associated with bringing the structure still into compliance with the regulatory and safety needs, those still exist as well, just as they do for alternative 1. So this ended up actually being the most costly, or sorry, not the most, but the cost for this requires maintenance, perpetual maintenance, as well as the cost of designing the fish passage. For alternative 3, so maintaining part of the reservoir and part of the dam includes similar impacts to alternative 2. But in this case, the thermal warming and water quality impacts will remain. However, the magnitude of it will be reduced. So this alternative allows for us to construct wetlands on the floodplains to offset the loss of the reservoir turtle habitat. And overall, this option does support partial reestablishment of the natural function, both biological and physical, and the appearance of the watercourse. It also includes some opportunities to enhance the terrestrial and aquatic habitats. And this This alternative does include a construction cost that is higher than alternative two. But unlike alternative one, the 1 and 2, the dam classification changes. So in that case, the need for ongoing dam safety and dam maintenance requirements are eliminated. The costs of this alternative are related to design and construction of the dam structure modifications, the bypass channel, and implementing a new channel in the former reservoir. So this is how this evaluation concluded that alternative 3 is partially preferred or moderately preferred. For alternative 4, there was some consideration in the fact that many dams in Ontario are nearing the end of their life expectancy. And in many instances, the purpose for which they were built no longer applies. So issues surrounding structural integrity and stability may require that the dam be decommissioned in order to address the safety concerns. It eliminates long-term operating and maintenance costs, enhances local and downstream environmental conditions. So as you can see, when you compare them to the other alternatives in all categories, it ended up being the preferred alternative. The next slide, please. So our recommended solution is alternative 4, the dam removal and watercourse restoration. And what this does in terms of benefits is that it addresses riverine flooding through dam decommissioning and the channel realignment. It enhances terrestrial and aquatic habitat. It reestablishes the natural function and appearance of the watercourse. It creates new habitat linkages for fish passage. It removes the thermal warming concerns and water quality effects that were caused by the reservoir. And of course, low future ongoing dam maintenance and safety costs. Next. So based on that preferred alternative, the mitigation measures and environmental considerations for each of the value components that we looked at include with regards to surface water and soil stabilization, we will of course look at erosion and sediment control measures and a plan associated with that. For terrestrial, we would of course avoid vegetation removal between April 1st and August 31st to protect from impact to species. And of course, permits may be required from MECP and UTRCA. For aquatic, no in-water work from May 1st to July 15th, and we would need DFO's approval with a request for review that would be submitted because there is fish and mussel habitat within the current reservoir. And of course, permits may be required from DFO and MECP for that. From a noise perspective, the project will adhere to the noise bylaw, which says no construction noise between 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. daily. From a groundwater perspective, there would be a well survey conducted to confirm that groundwater and wells will not be impacted by the work conducted. From a built heritage perspective, there are 2 heritage properties that were identified in I guess the larger study area, neither of which would be directly affected by construction. From an archaeological perspective, stage 2 archaeological assessments would be required for the area. So that would be conducted in detailed design. From a social perspective, of course, we have already heard comments about the use of the trail. So we made sure that in all alternatives the trail was included. So there's no alternatives that look at a possibility of without a trail. From a climate change perspective, of course, the project itself improves flood resilience, as well as improves the water quality and habitat conditions. Next slide. So in terms of next steps, there are, of course, any comments that we have received thus far have been included as part of the design. And any new comments that we receive from today onwards will also be included and considered as we move through the process of confirming this preferred alternative and developing the environmental study report. And so the next time that you will see any notice would be the filing of that environmental study report, which once again is a 30-day public review of the document, where you can read through that, and it'll be available on the project website. This recording will be posted onto the project website. So any links that you may need or look at through the website will be available. If you want to provide any feedback on the project, if you don't think of it right now, that's totally fine. You can just email Jillian or Heather. Their emails are there, and it was also included in the notice that you guys received to attend today. So if you have any questions, once again, please feel free to put them in the chat and we will be happy to answer them.